weren't very many women in the profession and tell them that you were over-vaccinating. How are we going to get our clients and the patients into our clinics unless we have the hook of telling them to come in and get a vaccination every year? That still happens worldwide, by the way. I teach all over the world now. And in Denmark and in Israel and in Serbia recently, they look at me in horror. What? I won't have any patients if I don't do vaccinations. I said, come on, you guys, think out of the box. Think out of the box. Why are you a medical professional? So you can look, you can do physical exams, you can do all the wonderful things we learned about today, right? You can do blood tests, you can do urinalysis, you can do other things to make sure your patients stay well. You're doing wellness exams, and your wellness includes an annual vaccine update. Oh, what's that? You discuss it, and you decide whether they need a vaccine, they need a blood test, or they don't need anything. But you still have the same, quotes, hook to get them in to your clinic, and you feel a heck of a lot better about yourself as a medical professional, don't you? Oh. And in Tel Aviv, my husband was in the audience when I started to do that, about 150 veterinarians there looking. And I started to talk about this, and all of a sudden they started to talk to each other. Now I'm teaching, and they're talking to each other. Considered as individualized medicine. In people, that would be personalized medicine, right? Tailored to the needs of the individual pet and delivered as one part of a preventive medicine program and an annual health check visit. A vaccine update discussion, right? What about adjuvants to vaccines? Now, adjuvants are used to accelerate, prolong, or enhance antigen-specific immune responses. Massive. Huh? When all the vaccines are developed first in laboratory beagles, about 25 to 30 pounds, right? Why do they do that? Oh, well, the vaccine companies tell you, we put a lot of extra antigen in just to make sure it's enough for the mastiff. Make sure it immunizes. What about the little tiny dog? They're getting too much, right? Of course. Why do we do that? Well, even my friend Ron Schultz and I disagree on this. He says, modified live vaccines, Gene, yes sir, the immunogenic principle is not based on body mass. How can that be? Are you telling me that a big dog has more blood, right, than a little dog? And the white blood cell count on average is the same. Does the St. Bernard only have 1/10 of the number of white cells that are present in the Yorkie? No, they're the same. So the St. Bernard has more immune responsive stem cells in its body than the Chihuahua. It has to. So how can it be not based on body mass? If you're giving a low dose to a St. Bernard, does the vaccine look for the right white cell? Where are you? Where are you? Right? Of course it doesn't. So to me it makes no sense. He just says, take it as fact, Gene. Get it? Oh well. But listen to this. Killed with vaccine should be adjusted for body mass. Are we allowed to give less than a full dose of rabies to a Chihuahua than a St. Bernard? No, we're not. So the whole thing is fallacious, right? Doesn't make any sense. Why don't we dose rabies vaccine based on the size of the animal we're immunizing? We don't. There's no data, but logically it should be different. Now the Rabies Challenge Fund has some new data, but we'll see. What are the minimum doses for protection? What are the optimum doses for protection? But we put extra antigen in just in case. Okay, now let's look. They're going to be protected earlier. That is unwise. The modified live distemper vaccine insert says do not give it before 6 weeks of age because it produces distemper. Okay? But some breeders, unfortunately, not being immunologists, okay, can give their vaccines in our country. Other countries don't allow it, and they give it too early. Which vaccines? Rabies and the combo wombo given together. Veterinarians do it all the time. Please don't do that. Because rabies, remember, is the vaccine most likely to produce adverse reactions, and it's got, most of them are using, from the companies that most veterinarians use, they have mercury in the rabies vaccine. There are 2 vaccines for rabies that do not contain mercury. Okay? One of them is Mariel Imrab, capital I, capital M, capital R, capital A, capital B. And it's called Imrab TF, thimerosal-free, 1 for the 1 year. Imrab TF3, thimerosal-free for the 3 year. Now the problem is Mariel makes one with mercury. So you have to make sure that they get the one that's Imrab TF, 1 or 3. It's the same vaccine. Yeah, same vaccine, okay. And that it doesn't have thimerosal, okay? It costs more money. So at rabies vaccine clinics, they don't use the more expensive vaccine. But you're willing to pay another few dollars not to get mercury in your puppy, right? Yeah. Of course. Okay, the second one is by Boehringer Ingelheim. It's called RABVAC, R-A-B-V-A-C, 1 TF or 3 TF. Okay? Boehringer Ingelheim, you know that name, it used to be Fort Dodge, can't say it. Boehringer Ingelheim, B-I. RABVAC 1 TF. Or RABVAC 3 TF. They reverse the numbering. It's the same. Those are the only 2. Okay? So you can warn your veterinarian ahead of time. You want to be sure that they have it. And if they don't have it in stock, you'll have them get it in stock. If they don't get it in stock or can't get it in stock because they come from a corporation that doesn't have it, you find somebody else that will do it. Okay? Now, rabies vaccines by law can be given some places unwisely at 12 weeks of age, no good. Some places at 16 weeks of age, better for 20 to 24 weeks. And the law requires 20 to 24 weeks. Even if your state allows it at 12 or 16, you don't have to give it then, okay? As late as possible. Did you have a question? I can't hear from, so I'll come over here.
Why did we do 3 of the core vaccines?
Okay, why do you have to have 3 of the core vaccines? Only because if you're giving it because many veterinarians will give 9 and 12, and you'll let them do that, and then you want 1 more. You can give 2 only, like I do. 9 to 10, the first one, and 14 to 16 for the second one. The question is, if you do it at 14, you're going to have to give another parvo at 18. If you do it at 16, so do you want to leave your puppy from 9 or 10 weeks until 16 weeks with nothing? It depends on where you are, and whether you're competing, or whether you're out in the world, and so you have to use your own judgment, best judgment.
Could you titer
Okay?
test?
Huh?
Could you titer test in between?
Sorry.
Could you titer test in between?
No. Very good question. Oh, pooh, I'll just do what Jean says. I'll titer test in between. No. Why? Because you've got residual immunity from the mother that you're still going to be measuring. So you're going to have a false sense of security. Most dams have been vaccinated at the beginning. So they have high titers that are going to last for 14 to 16 weeks. So when you do a titer after one dose of vaccine, you're measuring some of the mother's maternal immunity, which is going to go away. Don't take a chance. So when do you titer? 3 weeks after the last puppy or kitten series, you can do a valid titer because they're going to be older. Okay? Some people wait and do a titer at 6 months. Whatever. When they go in to get their rabies. Okay? Okay. It protects against most likely to cause adverse reactions. How many of you have been told by your veterinarians you've got to have leptospirosis and Lyme vaccines here in the Northeast over and over and over again? Yeah, all of you, of course. But if the clinical case, leptospirosis is a reportable disease, if the clinical cases in your community that have been documented in humans and animals are not in the vaccine, the serovars are not in the vaccine, giving more vaccine doesn't help at all. For example, if you have Leptospira autumnalis, Leptospira bratislava, Leptospirus harjo, they're not in the vaccines. You can give Leptospira vaccines up the yin-yang and you won't produce protective titers. So you need to find out if there's a leptospirosis scare, and it can happen in your area, which strains of leptospirosis were clinically identified with the disease. If it's one of the ones that are in the vaccines, then give the vaccines. If you're in an exposure risk, you go out in the woods and you have slow-moving streams and you have cattle running through where they're going. You know, common sense, right? Otherwise, don't give it. Hold on, 3 or more days after the last round of puppy vaccines, they can be out and about and be socialized. So, you socialize them in the backyard, because you don't know who's been going through the front yard, right? Socialize them in your home. Socialize them with friends that you know. Socialize them in puppy training classes where you know the people that go there, where the puppies are healthy. Otherwise, you wait 3 days until the last vaccine, and then that's ahead of any exposure, right? So then it'd be safe to go where you need to go. Okay? So, socialize in the backyard, puppy training classes, etc. Till fully vaccinated, they should not walk on unfamiliar or public grounds. They can be carried about if needed to travel. Not a St. Bernard, but most animals you could walk in a parking lot or something with them in your hands. Did you have a question?
Yes, how can we find out which strain of leptospirosis?
What then?
How can we find out?
Oh, how can you find out what strains of leptospirosis have been clinically reported? Call your local public health agency. It's a reportable disease. If your veterinary association doesn't know, call the public health agency in your county. Are there any clinically reported cases of leptospirosis since 2018, for example? And they'll tell you what serovars they are, because it's reportable. It's a zoonotic disease. We can catch it, okay? That's why. Let me carry on here. It doesn't cross-protect against the other upper respiratory viruses and bacteria, okay? So you have the intranasal or the oral. They release from the body of the vaccinated an antibody called interferon. Interferon then stops the growth of parainfluenza, adenovirus 2, and even influenza. Adenovirus 2 is what we use for hepatitis, okay? Kennel cough. Okay, so injectable Bordetella doesn't release interferon, so why give it? Has no cross-protecting effect against the others. So you're taking a risk of an adverse reaction to a vaccine that isn't as protective as the intranasal or the oral. Okay, hypersensitivity reactions occur with intranasal. Think about it. You go into the veterinary clinic, you get the intranasal Bordetella, you're standing with the dog, the pet, and the vet's standing there, and they squish it up the nose. The vaccine spreads all around the face, can be in the eyes, can get into you, can get into the veterinarian, whatever. Why would you do that? You give the oral, you open their mouth, and you put it in the back of the mouth, and close the mouth. So it's not going to cross-spread. Can you imagine what it would be like to get Bordetella vaccine in your eyes? Never mind the puppy's eyes, right? So don't use the intranasal either. And if your veterinarian only carries intranasal, have them order the oral. And if they don't want to do that, you order it and have it shipped to them so they can't say that you didn't handle the vaccine properly. Okay? There's a way around everything. Okay. Kennel cough vaccines are not 100% effective. Anyway, do we need them? Maybe not. Now, grooming places, grooming parlors, daycares, whatever, may recommend that. They say they want Bordetella vaccines every 4 months to board your animal in our emporium. Thank you very much, you say, and you go somewhere else. Okay? You ask them first, though. Will you take a waiver if I write that I hold you harmless? If all the other animals have been vaccinated because that's what the people didn't know any better, what are they going to give your dog? If you think they're protected, which they're not, but never mind, we don't tell them that. And if your dog is healthy and they're vaccinated, what is your dog going to give them? Nothing, right? So if they'll take a waiver, you can still use the facility, sign a waiver, and go off. If they won't, you find somebody will. And you know what happens in cities? All the boarding and grooming places get together, and 1 or 2 start accepting those of you that don't want to vaccinate. All the others do it too, or they lose their clients. So it's called peer pressure. Okay, influenza. Do we need the vaccine for influenza? Ugh. Produces a fever. Kennel cough doesn't. But some animals harbor streptococcus, very few, in their lungs. If they get influenza, one of the 2 strains, they can get chronic fatal pneumonia. But that's very few animals. Home from a agility or obedience or a confirmation trial, right? If the animal has no fever, it's kennel cough. If the animal has a fever, it's influenza. Okay? It's that simple. Okay. Kennel cough does not typically produce a fever unless it then leads to pneumonia. If you have a parasitized, debilitated, malnourished animal, it can get pneumonia from kennel cough, right? But your dogs are not like that. Okay, canine flu usually presents as a fever in the early stages. The fever can be 102 to 103, which is still upper normal. No treatment is needed. If it's above 104, and it can be 107, by the way, please go to your veterinarian and have proper treatment with fluids and antibiotics as needed. We do not routinely give canine influenza vaccines to healthy pets or even healthy adults. Even though they're highly contagious, the 2 strains, N2 and N8, they're highly contagious. So everybody's exposed, like everybody gets colds, everybody gets flu, right? You just have to keep them healthy. So giving canine influenza vaccine willy-nilly is not a good idea. She didn't have a combo wombo, and obviously she couldn't have an immunity, right? She hadn't been vaccinated last year. So therefore I'm going to give her a vaccine. No, you're not going to do that. Are you going to vaccine to her when she's in heat? No, never. What about when she's pregnant? Oh gosh, never, right? Even though we're trying to change horses, by the way, so we don't vaccinate pregnant horses anymore. That's my new thing. And we don't give it when they're lactating because it sheds vaccine virus potentially to babies that are too young, okay? So never vaccinate during hormonal change. If you have a situation with a lease where you're required to do that in order to breed the bitch, tell the people, thank you, no, we'll skip this heat and we'll do it the next one, okay? After all, it's the life of the mother and all the babies that you're worried about. And that your dog might have been exposed. You're not sure when your dog was last vaccinated for distemper. You can't wait to do a titer, which by the way takes overnight, but some places take a week, okay? So you can vaccinate that female, and it will be immediately protected, and it doesn't shed very much. So if you know you had an acute potential canine distemper virus exposure, you can give the female a monovalent distemper vaccine. There's only one, NeoVac-D, N-E-O-V-A-C-D, made by Neotech. You can give that vaccine and she'll be immediately protected, okay? If you have a parvovirus outbreak exposure, which is much more likely, you can't do that. The vaccinates after 48 to 72 hours will be protected so they can get sick. They won't get as sick as if you didn't vaccinate them, but they will not be protected immediately, so please remember that, okay? But this parvovirus vaccine sheds for days 3 to 14, so there's an exposure risk for any other animals around the animal that you vaccinate. Okay? You can't see the shed parvovirus vaccine on the in-office Hydex snap test, but if your veterinarian does parvovirus polymerase chain reaction on the feces, it'll be positive for 2 weeks. And the problem with that is veterinarians have told people that their puppies had parvo when they had a vaccine shed virus that was being measured. You know, because they go to a wellness check and they take a fecal sample and they measure it, comes back positive for parvo. Your healthy puppy has parvovirus. It doesn't. It's shedding the parvovirus vaccine it had 2 weeks, within the prior 2 weeks. So again, you have to know. Proof that you need it every year. Need to lengthen the interval every 3 to 7 years or do a titer instead. Don't vaccinate old animals. Monitor their blood titers instead. Protection is indicated by a positive event. Any measurable titer shows protection. Any. I said that already. Okay, so what do? We measure. Dog hasn't been here for 5 years and you're here because it's ADR. Ain't doing right. You need to get the combo wombo booster. No way, Jose, right? Don't want it. The animal is sick. It's not right. Tailor specific vaccine protocols for dog and cat breeds of families at risk that you know, like Weimaraners or Harlequin Danes, for example, or Akitas. Start the vaccination series later. Alert the caregiver to watch for behavior and health issues after boosters for up to 30 to 45 days. Remember, keep track. Avoid revaccinating those that have had a prior event. Animal had a documented severe adverse vaccine reaction, got better, thank God. It was treated appropriately, thank God. Do you vaccinate it again? Never. And if they insist, you say, let me think about it, Dr. Jones. Smile sweetly and get the hell out of there. Okay? I know that. Corona, never pay a penny to do a coronavirus titer. Veterinarians offer you a package with distemper parvo corona. Forget it. Coronavirus immunity is in the gut, not measured in the serum. So don't pay any money for this. And rabies, of course, you can titer, not for export. There's a potential for an adverse reaction. Recognize it when it occurs rather than denying it. Inform clients, this is for veterinarians now, of the issues, encourage other options. Offer titers every 3 years or more often if you, the client, wants to do it. I don't think it's necessary. And explain that optional vaccines may not be needed, depending on where you live and the circumstances. Okay. Right? Neutering, we don't know why that is. Multiple vaccines given per visit, and these risks should be communicated to the clients. 2005. Are we doing that?
No. No way.
We're not. Lori's pointing to her watch. That means shush.
Yeah. But you're coming back, so don't
Okay.
watch us pause.
Pictures.
Aw.
Vaccinosis. Healthy. Raw diet, of course. Sick. Molly May. Sick. Molly May. Raw diet. TLC. No vaccine. Yorkie poo. You could fry an egg on her. Hyperemia. No more vaccines. Her name was Angel. Here's a white Akita puppy with vaccinosis, died after a second vaccine. Survived the first reaction, went to a veterinary school, and as she was leaving, they said, not protected against parvo, give one more vaccine. He died. Here's a family of Akitas, all 10 months old, a long coat throwback, 10-month-old with thyroiditis already, and this little dog that never grew. That's Isho. Isho was a Pekingese with long legs. Ishu had every 30 days after never being revaccinated, had these episodes of fever, swelling, pain, malaise. We did acupuncture, we did chiropractic adjustments. She was on all kinds of special, anything she would eat, including lettuce. We let her have whatever she wanted. Here she is thanking me for saving her life. Look at my double chins. Oops. There she is with her great aunt Sonia. She changed her whole body color from calcinosis circumscripta, from calcium deposits on her skin. This is what size she should have been. She lived 4 days before her 3rd birthday, the longest living Akita with this familial vaccinosis reaction. And she's winking because she said she beat the Grim Reaper. But she didn't. There's a whole memorial to Isho from my friend Lynn Drum in Wisconsin. So here's the thimerosal-free rabies vaccine, and one of the 2 I told you about.